afternoon, Lagos. Welcome to today's edition of Tech Vibes, and here we're streaming from our Marina studios. This is Lagoon Radio, your number one online gospel radio in Nigeria. Yeah, you can connect to us live via social media handles on Facebook, which is at Lagoon Radio Nigeria, and Twitter and Instagram, which is Lagoonradio.Ng. Yeah, you can call on today's show. Our number is 08189524666. And I repeat again, 08189524666. Yeah, you can always watch us live on our YouTube channel, which is LagoonTV.TV. And yeah, for more information, always go to our website, which is Lagoon the News. And today promises to be very exciting as we are continuing our series on minimal viable product and how to start your startup, if I may use that word. Today we're going to be looking at something that's very, very critical. You know, we've been talking for the past 2 weeks, we've been talking about how to build a product or a service, how to run your own startup. And it might sound very easy to say, okay, I have this brilliant idea, I have the next sci-fi idea of developing this an hypersonic plane that can fly around the whole corners of the earth, or you have a jet that you want to build that can go to a rocket that you want to shoot out of space. Maybe you're in that lane of what's his name, Jeff Bezos, and the Virgin guy who are already thinking of how to go and start up another life in Mars. So whatever your idea or your intuition is, it's good to have an idea. But if there are no processes, if there are no procedures, if there are no laid down plans, you won't be able to achieve these things. Those things will just be like a mere dream, which you can't achieve. So today we're going to be talking about something that is very, very critical in every startup or in every business. There has to be a way to measure growth. There has to be a way to measure your performance. And so that leads us to today's topic, which we're going to be talking about KPIs. And what does that acronym stand for? It stands for your key performance indicator. Okay, so the whole idea of this thing is being able to have data in every area, data to be able to help you measure skills, even from your accounting to your sales to whatever, everything, revenue generation to your customers, your employee churn, So everything requires data because, of course, without those data, without the valuable data, you won't be able to do predictive analysis. You cannot plan, ultimately, and you cannot get the desired result at the end of the day. So it leads me to this. Every successful company has what is called KPI, which signifies or stands for your key performance indicator. What does this help you do? These are factors, these are things that you need to be looking out for. Some are primary, some are secondary. But these are key things that you need to, as a startup, as a company, as an organization. There are some metrics, there are some keys, there are some indicators that you use to measure growth. And understanding how these things works makes a whole lot of sense. And it determines the lifespan of a business or an entity or a startup or a company or any organization. So properly defining or properly articulating or properly strategizing and developing a proper key performance indicator determines either the failure of that company or the success of that company. So without wasting much time, I want to really explain what the key performance indicator means. So what does this basically mean? Your key performance indicator are just the elements of your plan that express what you want to achieve by when or how you want to. Okay, so they are quantifiable outcome based on statements you have used to measure if you're on track to meet your goals or objectives. Basically, what does this mean? These are rules, measures, things that there are activities that you need to do, things that you need to measure to be able to know if actually we are making any progress or we're making any headway, or we should just pack up and look for something else to do. So it will help you find a balance in between your organization, especially when it comes to every area. Because so I was having an argument with somebody. Do you even how do you even set KPIs for things like your generator repairs and all those kind of things? So all these things have to be factored into whatever you're doing, because if those things are not properly channeled, or you don't measure all those things, even things like your employee churn, your employees leaving your company, if you don't know the factor, the reasons why you are losing your best hands in your organization, that can deplete in your revenue. Because if the person who is supposed to be writing maybe a code or something leaves, it brings like a setback for your organization. Or maybe your accountant leaves, who already understands how your business model works. Before you now bring in somebody else that will need to understand how do it would have you'd have lost some time. And time for every business means a whole lot. It means money. Time is money, because the time being wasted, especially for instance, if you're in a production line, maybe you are producing something like anything in terms of production scale. Imagine if you shut down your plant for one day. You know what that means? You're going to be losing a whole lot of money, from your suppliers to those your creditors, your debtors, and everything. Before you know it, you run out of business just for shutting down for one day. So, or you run it into, your books will be showing red, because you skipped one production timeline, which is going to deplete in your stocks, basically in your revenue sheet. So without wasting much time, so what are this what okay, what is the anatomy of a structured key performance indicator? So another term for this, it's a set of quantitative metrics that indicates how healthy your business is doing. So that is a clear definition of what your key performance indicator is. So it helps you set a quantifiable, matrix that indicates how healthy your organization is, or your business is. This thing cuts across every business, whether you're a social enterprise, whether you're a church, whatever. Setting standards to measure, key performance indicators, from your staff to even the members of your church, even to to everything. So it gives you an insight of the entire overview, like entire structure of your organization. So what are the key anatomies of the structured KPI? These factors includes a measure. Okay, every KPI must have a measure, and they must be more expressive. What do I mean by this? You need to measure. Okay, for instance, now, like, the role of an accountant in any organization is to be able to track your receivables and your track everything that's to do with finance. In fact, the lifeline of the organization. So from your net to your gross, whether it's loss or a profit. This helps you, measure growth in every area, from your customer churn to your revenue growth, to your cost of sales and everything. So it's just a medium to be able to, measure, whatever you're doing. So these are just key structured analysis of what you want to do. So a target too is another way. Okay, every KPI needs to have a target that matches your measure and at the time period of your goal. These are generally a numeric value you are seeking to achieve. So, like I rightly said, every business will have its own timeline. You have a target. You always have what you want to achieve at the end of every financial year. So those tasks will be broken down into quarterly goals, quarterly targets, monthly targets, weekly targets, and even daily targets. So because without that, you won't be able to break even. Any company or any organization or any business that does not have targets set targets, means that they're already preparing to fail, because you can't just start up a business without having a clear cut goal of how you want to achieve those things, what you need to do, and how do you intend to make money. Because the lifeline of every business is revenue. So revenue is the number one thing that that, because business is profit oriented. So you're not going to a business to go and run into loss. You're going to a business to maximize profit at every cost, whether using technology, whether using physical manpower, whatever your set goal is. You need to have a target. Target is very, very important, because this will help you measure growth. When you set out a target, whether it hits that threshold or not, the most important thing is there's a target. You have what you're looking up to. So maybe you set a higher standard for yourself or a lower standard, doesn't matter. But the most important thing is for you to have a target. And every organization that has a target, helps them, scale, helps them look inwards to see, okay, maybe you set up a target to meet up maybe 100 sales in a month. And at the end of the day, you're able to do just like maybe 30. So these key performance indicators will help you know where those, challenges were, and you'll be able to track them in real time, and you'll be able to work towards them and ensure growth for your organization. So your data source is another key factor. So every KPI needs to have a clear, defined data source, so that there'll be no gray areas in how each of is being measured or tracked. So your data source matters most. How do you source for this, information? Like, for instance, you have a website that has maybe like 1 million traffic monthly. So how do you measure the customer flock into your website? How do you measure downtime? How do you measure uptime? How do you measure your employee time in the office? Do they spend time watching soap operas at work, or there's a way you monitor? So how do you get those data? How do you get how do you know when your employees come to work early and when they leave? So these are your data source. How do you actually get your revenue stream? How do you get it? Is it from a website? Is it from an app? Is it from just word of mouth? How do you so those mediums at which you get all those things, you can collate the data, and becomes a viable source for you to be able to work with it, and be able to make proper solutions or better decision making for your organization. So your data source is, in fact, out of everything that I've talked about, the data source is the most important. In fact, in every organization, that should be your de facto goal. It should be your number one target. How to source for data in your organization, both the financial data, the analysis from your operational activities, from what you do. So if you're in the production line, what it takes from raw material to the finished product, the timeline, what it takes for you to distribute those things to all your distributors, the logistics behind it. How do you consume fuel? What is the amount of fuel that each of the lorries or the trailers that convey your goods and services to different locations, how much time do they spend on the road? So what is the timeline, what is the kilometer from maybe point A to point B? So these are very sensitive information that will help you make better decisions as an organization or as a startup. So with all this kind of information that you have at your disposal, it will help you plan, and having the right set of people in your organization will help you make proper proper decisions that would either grow the organization or so in terms of revenue, or maybe to minimize cost of goods sold or cost of sale. So the data source is very, very, in fact, it's very, very important on how you source your information. How do you get this data, which you need to work on, and they have to be real time. Your reporting frequency is another strategy. How do you do your reporting? Different KPIs may have different reporting needs. Okay, but a good rule to follow is to report on them at least monthly. So, in fact, I don't think monthly is even good enough, because for you to be able to track, your activity, it has to be on a daily basis. Because, for instance, if you have a startup that requires you to make money on a daily basis, like, for instance, daily subscription, maybe you push out content, or you're a software as a service, like you run the SaaS. SaaS mostly should be maybe monthly, or maybe pay per as you go, or pay per use, or whatever your strategy is. Your reporting frequency matters a whole lot, because the medium at which you report the information really matters on how the organization is going to be repositioned for either to move forward or to keep losing money and losing value or losing traction. So I'm going to be breaking down or segmenting these KPIs into different segments. Like, so we're going to be starting with, like, I want to give like an insight or like an example. I want to make sure that I'm able to digest this thing, and make it simple in a layman's form that an average person can understand what I'm saying. So, like, how do we segment these KPIs? Like I rightly said, the KPI is just for you to be able to track performance. It's just for you to be able to, set the right goals and be able to track those things and be able to get the expected results. So even though you're not meeting up to your maybe your set target for the month, or the yeah, exactly, the target you set for the month, but with these indicators, they will point you to the right direction to tell you, like, maybe if your sales, your manner-wise, it's not enough. Maybe you need to go into automation real time to scale up production. It will show you from all the indication from the data, from your data pool. It can direct you. It can give you all the indices. Maybe the negative indices, the positive indices, for you to be able to make better decisions, especially at that board level where you guys you need to move. Whether you move rapidly and you move at an accelerated space. So, for example, I want to start with the sales KPI. So, basically, this will help you understand your sales growth, especially your sales funnel, your strategy. So, why you have this big marketing budget, or you have this sales budget, understanding, tracking how your sales works, revenue flow end to end, matters a whole lot. These are like one of the primary things. Revenue is key in every business. In fact, any business that's not revenue driven, or it doesn't have a strategy to make money, is already preparing itself to fail. Except even social enterprise organizations still have strategies of how they need to generate revenue, because the lifeline of every business is revenue, so that it will be able to resuscitate itself, it will be able to solve its own internal problems, pay staff, all those operational expense that you need to run, like your diesel. You need to have maybe you need to buy more laptops, you need to buy more workstations. Basically anything that will make you run your day-to-day activity. You need internet, you need markers, you need boards, you need things as minute as staplers. They're very, very important. Pins inside those staplers. These things are very, very important. Maybe newspapers in the office and stuff like that. So, depending on your operating budget, your expense sheet matters a lot. So, how do you track sales? So, like, for instance, if you have a website or an app, so you should be able to track the number of new users, okay, or new contract that is signed per period, like monthly, weekly. You should be able to, okay, let's say monthly. You should be able to sign new customers that sign to your platform, at a given period of time. So for you to understand how many of them are signing up. Then secondly, you should be able to track how many active users you have. So, okay, for sales, basically, you should be able to track, like, for instance, your Naira value for new contracts signed per period. Okay, the number of engaged qualified leads in your sales funnel. This is another thing you need to track. Things that can be converted into actual sales. The sales pipeline has its own steps. So how do you track those things? What tools do you use to track your sales pipeline from presentation to the actual sales? Either maybe word of mouth, depending on your business strategy and your sales strategy. So some sales are direct, maybe one-to-one, one-on-one. You need to move. Some are B2B, some are B2C, some are through your channels, maybe your website and your app, and so whatever. So all these are mediums. So being able to track sales, your revenue stream, is your number one de facto tool that you need to look at. It sets good KPIs to be able to track these things. Hours of resources spent on sales follow-up. This is very, very important. I know of companies who have very huge budgets, advertisement budgets, so from their sales agents to to normal conventional ads that they run on TV, radio, and normal conventional. Then the electronic medium too, like for instance, the online platform, the social media platforms. I know of companies who spend millions of a lot of companies do on ads, but sometimes they don't properly track these things to be able to know how effective those sales channels are. Because those mediums actually, for instance, you might be sending. Imagine you selling something like Dropbox to teenagers. They might not really see any need for that. But if you are selling something like an animated short video, or a social media platform. So of course, your target audience will be the youths or adolescents or kids between the ages of maybe let's say 12 to like maybe 25. You have to have your market segment. So if you're running an ad that is targeting the wrong market segment, yeah, and you don't properly track them, at the end of the day, you will not make profit, and you'll be spending a lot of money on your marketing budget. At the end of the day, you're not getting the right traction. I know of a company that sells luxury products, yet they are going to do ads on Linda Ikeji. How on earth do you expect yourself to be selling a very high-end product? Your target audience can't be there, for crying out loud. You should know where your market segment is. You can't be selling a product of maybe like $50 million, $20 million, and you're targeting. So that would be like a waste of resources. Except maybe what you're just trying to do is brand positioning, or maybe, just creating that awareness. But the awareness to the wrong market is not a good business decision. You should be able to channel. So these are the things you need to understand. So why I'm saying all these things. So why not all ads is not ads. Your ads has to be focused. You should have segmentation. You should have your target audience. So understanding your target audience will help you, spend less, but focus your attention on the people that might need it. So if I want to sell a luxury apartment or a luxury business or a luxury jewelry or anything, maybe a luxury car or something, I won't be focusing on Linda KG or Facebook to sell this product. My focus should be on something like LinkedIn and all those, big platforms. Even I can do sales on Twitter or something like that, where I know that I'll meet people who are more responsive, people who are very articulate, people who think, who plan, and So I won't just be doing a random. I won't go and be selling a luxury product to people who do skits, or I can focus on maybe, for instance, the Yahoo boys or something here. So I'm just sorry, I'm not supposed to say that, but so I can focus my my target audience or my business model or my ads to a specific audience that I know that okay, this thing in returns, maybe if I spend like 50 million on ads, I should be able to get like maybe 500 million in returns. At least my target audience, I know that I'll be able to hit the target and I'll be able to make my sales there. So understanding all these things, and how do you understand if your ads is actually targeting the wrong audience, is by having data, collecting data, being able to understand all these things. So by setting proper KPIs to be able to track all these things, you'll be able to know, okay, if these things that I'm doing is even in the right place or I'm just doing the wrong thing at the right time. So this is another avenue for us to be able to think inwards and be able to set proper KPIs for all these things, to track these metrics so that we'll be able to make better decisions in our organizations. Another thing I'll talk about is average time for conversion. Okay, so basically this just means an average time to conversion is calculated as the total number of days between the first touch point in a conversion path and the conversion that happened divided by the total conversion. A lot of stories, but this is just a medium or a measure. This is another metrics that you can use to track, your sales funnel. Then your net sales and percentage growth. Your net sales growth is it just means the percentage increase, if there's any. Okay, so in your net product sales for the planned year related to the net product sales for the fiscal year preceding the planned year. In a nutshell, this is just tracking sales basically. So your net sales, these are there are indicators. So, like for instance, you have a company. Of course, you have your P&L, your profit and loss sheets. Your accountants should be able to do that for you, or even as a startup, you should be able to know how to build your financials. So, setting up your financial goals. So, you have your P&L, you have your proposed or your anticipated net profit, and your gross profit. So, you should be able to track your sales and be able to know, okay, based on your projections, I'm projecting that by so physical year, I should be able to make 100 million naira, in terms of sales. And these are my sales channels, and these are my mediums on a daily basis. This is what is expected to be done. On a weekly basis, this is what is expected to be done. And I have a track sheet to be able to monitor if those things were actually done. Because it's not for you to have an idea, it's for you to understand that there has to be a well thought out plan of how you're going to achieve your sales or your revenue. So when you have a well thought out plan on how you're going to make those sales, so it means that there are going to be activities on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, of what you need to do so that you can achieve those set goals. So those set goals has to come in a pre-planned manner. So when you set up these goals, then you set up a matrix or a tool to be able to track if you're actually on point. So by the end of every day, when you set up these goals, at the end of the day, in the evening or whatever, what time you want to check those metrics, you find out that, okay, if you've not achieved everything that you've set or your target for that day, you can move it to the next day and still continue from there. So by continually doing this, it means that you're on the path of growth. So at the end of the month, when you're doing your review, your normal profit, your normal meeting, you'll be able to track those growth, everything that you set to achieve for that month. You look at your sheet, you look at the KPIs, your key performance indicator. So if you're tracking revenue alone, you'll be able to say, okay, well, this is what we did at the end of the month, and these are the mediums that we used, or the medium that we used to achieve these things. And at the end of the day, this is the result that we got. What happened? How did we achieve the milestone that we set? Did we set that in every week we'll have a 10% growth rate? Or did we set a capacity, at the end of the month, maybe you have 15% growth rate? So these are thresholds that you've set up for yourselves, and using your KPIs to track these things to be able to know, okay, yes, ideally, I set up this target. Yes, we did it, and we surpassed the targets that we set for ourselves, or we didn't. And so from the KPIs, you'll be able to know that, okay, this performance, what were the indicators that made us not to achieve these things? What were the things that we didn't do well, or that we need to improve on, so that we can be able to get the set result? So these are key areas that we need to look at. So another example I want to talk about, because I have digressed, I talked about it a little, but there has to be a key focus on your financials. Your financial KPIs really matters. The growth in revenue is one major thing you need to set. So if you're a startup, the first thing you need to understand is, how do you make money? You have an idea, a fantastic idea, yeah, good. So what are the mediums at which you get, because if you have an idea and you don't have a strategic medium of getting money, then it means that thing is not scalable. It has to be solving real problems, and people should be able to pay for that product. They should be able to pay for that service, and they should be able to look at it and say, yeah, this is of high value for me. Whether the prototype or whether it's good or bad or it's half-baked, but people are willing to pay for it because you're actually solving real-time problems. And they won't even mind being the guinea pig or being people that you use them to run a pilot. And you have a solution and they can pay for it real-time, while you even get feedbacks from them to modify and add more features to your idea and whatever you're pushing out there. So your growth in revenue matters. This is just the simplest term. It means revenue growth is the amount of money your company makes over a predetermined time compared to the previous identical amount of time. So this is just your growth rate. So what you've predicted that at the end of this year, because when you're talking to investors, when you're talking to venture capitalists, even angels, anybody you're talking to, what they want to see is your growth rate. Before you talk to any investors, the first thing they will ask you, what is your revenue model? How do you intend to make money? First, they will ask you of your business model to even understand if you have a clear-cut, idea of what you want to do. So once you're able to defend, or you're able to, clearly state what your business or what problem your business or your idea is solving, then the first thing they will ask you is, do you have customers? Yeah, if you don't have customers, it's understandable, but they need you to clearly define how you intend to make money, and they need to look at your projections. Now, okay, let's say in the next 1 year, we might not break even, or maybe in the next 3 years we might not break even, but we have a kind of like exponential growth in terms of our revenue generation. So clearly, when you state these things and people see that yes, genuinely you can actually do this, everybody will want to pour money into a venture that that will scale. So, but when they see that you know what you're doing and you're able to defend these things, I'm sure investors will be talking to you and they won't listen to what you're saying. So your net profit margin, that's another thing. So the net profit margin is another KPI that you can track. So these are financial KPIs. KPI, like I said, is just your key performance indicator. This helps you grow your business. So like I rightly said, the whole idea is for you as a startup to, prototype, come up with an idea, use technology to back up that idea, push it out, make sure you're solving a problem that people want to use. Then tracking your growth matters a lot. So back to what I'm saying, your financial KPIs, we talked about the growth in revenue. Another thing is the net profit margin. So basically your net profit margin, or it's just simply your net margin. It measures how much the net income or profit is generated as a percentage of revenue. It is the ratio of your net profits. Basically, simple in a layman terms, it means the revenue minus the cost of sale. So just basic things. How much did it cost you to actually sell that product? Maybe for instance, you are selling a device on hardware or software on a hardware. So how much the medium? So okay, you've generated revenue. So the initial medium. I'm not talking about the operational expense, just the direct sales. What it's going to cost you to make that sales, happen. Maybe your channels and mediums, So those direct sales, once is minus, that's what gives you this. So your gross profit is the grandfather of everything. It is a metrics, or it's your gross. Let me say the gross profit margin is a metric analyst use to assess a company's financial health by calculating the amount of money left over from product sales after subtracting the cost of goods sold. The difference between the net profit margin is just the direct sales. Whatever is going to cost you, to sell that product is what is going to be deducted from the revenue. So you can have a net profit but have a gross loss, because by the time they calculate other operational expense with your depreciation, amortization, your tools, everything, the cost of running that business, by the time they deduct it and you still make profit, it means you're a very healthy company, or a very healthy startup, or a very healthy business. So that's what it means. So having this, it helps you as so having to track this KPI, helps you grow your business, helps you grow your startup. So, these days everybody's talking about, what we can do to, move to the next level. Because the truth be told, how long are you going to work, So, but if you start looking inwards, building real-time companies, real-time businesses, real-time, companies that can, actually scale over years, makes a whole lot of sense. So these are key metrics that you can track, your KPIs. So for the financials, I talked about the revenue growth, your net margin, your gross margin, gross profit margin. The other thing is your operational cash flow. It is very, very important, because you can't be talking about revenue, and you're not talking about the the entire, cash flow. Cash flow matters a lot in every business. That's the lifeline. That's the blood. That's the blood that runs between every business. So if your cash flow is not properly measured, it means you'll be making a whole lot of wrong business decisions, and you might sometimes, overshoot your expenditure, you know. So, but if you set a proper, so if you're tracking these things, it will help you guide making a better decisions, especially when it comes to operational expenses. Because there's no company that wants to waste money, building a product, and at the end of the day, you're not making profit. Because by the time you build a product, after paying salaries, after running the operational costs, maybe your physical structure, you need to pay rent for the place you're using, or maybe you bought it and you need to pay some, maybe your tournament rate, so many factors. At the end of the day, if your cost of sale is your least, I mean, next 10 to 15 years, depending on the kind of business. So if it's a large corporation, so maybe your bottom line, your margin should be like, your break even should be like maybe in 20 years or 30 years, depending on what you're looking at, your shit. But your shit should be healthy, and you should be able to see the growth. Now, okay, even if you've not broken, like you've not break even now, but they can see the trajectories, they can see the growth, that okay, yeah, this company is actually healthy, though you've not made profits, but it's certain that maybe in the next 30 years or 20 years or 10 years, depending on how large the corporation is, or depending on the kind of solution or problems that you're solving, okay, that in the next 5 years, next 10 years, you should be able to break even. And at the end of the day, the investors will be smiling to the bank, and everybody will be on a win-win situation. Yeah, so your inventory turnover is another thing again you need to track. So you need to set KPIs for all this. Your KPIs needs to help you, set targets for all these things, all these things. So I'm even using this as a case study. For instance, if you have a website, of course, you have the technology backend to it. And imagine if you have 1 million active users on your website, and, every day you have like daily average users of like maybe, have like 50,000 active users who come to your platform on a daily basis. The traction. So from the technology end, you'll be talking about servers. You need to be talking about where you're going to be storing all those people's data, like all the typing, the text, the images, videos, depending on kind of thing the website. So if, for instance, if it's an e-commerce site and you have a volume of 50,000 active users who come and purchase things on a daily basis, it means that's high volume. And for a tech startup, no, that can be a tech startup. For a company who runs at least 50,000 active users on a daily basis, means that's high volume of transaction. You need to store those images. You need to store the text, the feedbacks, and everything. So a lot of communication will be going on. Text will be stored, data, images will be stored, maybe videos will be stored for your sales and listings. Then a lot of things, a lot of maybe you geotagging the each individual that comes to your website. So all those tags too, all those codes will be stored on the platform, which means your server is going to be, of course, from a backend now, talking from the technical point of view, it means that your servers will, require a lot of bandwidth space, so that, you have real uptime and low latency. So these are key areas that you need to start looking at. So if you don't track all these things, you will have a very, very big problem, because if you don't set all these matrix, all these tools to be able to, get all these indicators, it means that you would, at some point, you will run into a serious problem. And when you run into a serious problem, you will find it very difficult to be able to trace where the challenge is, because sometimes it might not even be the technology that's the issue. It might just be that maybe the customers are dissatisfied with maybe the interface of your platform, or maybe your customer service is not even managing them well. So if you don't track response, so that's why it's good that most times when you're running a service like that, you should be able to get real feedback from your customers. So after sales, even after purchase, you still need to go back to them to get feedbacks. hello, madam, did you, or hello, did you get, how did you, can you rate our service? Maybe like a little questionnaire just to test to see if they can give you real feedback. And sometimes you find that so many of those customers are dissatisfied and they might not even want to come back again to your platform. But just asking them, okay, if they can, just give you like a survey of their experience with your platform. So with those experience and those feedback, you'll be able to track real time if the services that you're rendering is following the KPIs that you've set, or the metrics that you've set, or the standards that you set for your organization to be able to get the expected result. So this is very, very important that we track those things. Then there's what is called the EBITDA. It means earning before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization. Okay, this is a measure of a company's overall financial performance, and it is used as an alternative to net income in such circumstance. So this helps you track. So this is just like your operational expenses, your tax, all those, okay. So it helps you, be able to keep yourself in track. So as a sales startup, or sorry, as a tech startup, you have you want to sell, maybe you are into hardware and you're selling a smartwatch. You need to track from production to sales, because from raw materials you need to track all your suppliers, your receivables, your account receivables, your books. You need to find out how much you guys are owing, your debtors, your creditors. You need to find out the suppliers, those who are supplying different materials, then to production. At the end of the day, then you still need to track in terms of logistics, those who are going to deliver those goods from where the pick-up point to the delivery point. These are things that you need to track. So you need to, if you don't have proper tracking for all these things, you always have issues. Because for instance, if you have like 3 trucks picking maybe your raw material from somewhere like Zamfara, and you cannot measure the distance at which they travel on a daily basis, it's very obvious that those guys can come in with any strategy to tell you that today, okay, we use maybe 5,000 liters of diesel to get to that point A to point B. But if you have proper APIs to track, the movement of all those things, it will help you save revenue, and your operational cost will, not be depleted, and it will help you maximize revenue as a company. So that's just for that. Then another thing I want to talk about. So we are done with the finance. We looked at the sales KPIs that you can develop. Then now we've talked about the financial KPIs. Another thing I want to talk about is the customers KPI. You can't be talking about business and your customers are not satisfied. Your ability to be able to, because number one, your customers are key. They are the main reason why you're in market, and they are the main reason why you're even existing in the first place. So if you don't have a strategy to be able to manage or to be able to track your customers, then you are doomed to fail as a startup, or you're doomed to fail as a business. Remember, there are 2 separate things. Like if I have a barber shop, and the barber shop it's not a startup. So people shouldn't get these things confused. If I have something like a Google, a search engine, do you understand that I can have like 1 million tractions, like active 1 million users on a daily basis? That is a startup. The difference between a startup and a normal business is that I cannot travel from Lagos to Ibadan just to go and cut my hair, or to have my hair cut, or my beard shaved, because number one is the barber shop or the barber himself will not even accommodate me. So if I spend the money from Lagos here to Ibadan to just go and have a haircut, and I have to pay for accommodation, then I have to come back to Lagos. You see that it's not a business that can scale over time. Difference when you say startup is a business that can grow at a very astronomical growth rate. I mean, maybe from today you have 2 users. Like for instance, let me just use a case study. You have a very nice e-commerce website, and you can grow that e-commerce to become, a very big platform. Different ways you can grow them organically. You can grow them by, other conventional means, maybe spending a lot of money on ads. So depending on your strategy on your sales, customers are very, very key. in every business. So I'm going to specifically use tech related startups as a case study. So this thing is going to be in line with what we're talking about. So how do you manage customers? What are the things that you need to track? What are the things that will be in your KPIs, your key performance indicator, to be able to help you build a scalable tech startup? So what are the key things that you need to look at? Number one, you have to understand the number of customers retained, because a lot of people want traffic to their site, but forgetting that if a customer comes to a particular website today and they feel dissatisfied, or they are not, or they think maybe the content is not suited for their own particular kind of personnel or something, at the end of the day you've lost that customer. So understanding your customers behavioral pattern, or the kind of things your customer segment, like Google for instance. Google has no limitation. Everybody on net uses Google. Both kids go there to search for things. Young people go to the search engine to search for whatever music, social platform. Businesses use Google for, especially website. They use the Google search engine as their SEO to rank their platforms or their websites. A lot of advanced people use Google for their research. So students use Google, or people in tertiary institutions use Google most times for their search related topics or whatever they want to do. So you see that it's a platform that everybody needs. So Google is solving a real-time problem. Apple, for instance, is solving a problem. Why? Because people like hardware. People want to go in line with trend, what is trending. And Apple, understanding customers' behavior, they build things that people will always want to buy. Everybody wants to own an iPhone 13, and a Mac Pro, So they're understanding their markets. They understand that everybody wants it, though it's not affordable. It's not something everybody can afford. But everybody, if you're opportune to have a Mac or an iPhone, you will definitely go for it. So they've understood the customers' mindsets, how the purchasing power of people. They know what to keep people on their toes who want to buy an Apple product. So these are key strategies. Okay, so let me narrow it down to Nigeria. We have platforms who are doing large volumes of transactions on a daily basis. We have the payment channels. I don't want to call them. It's okay. For instance, like you have the Paystack, you have the Flutterwave, you have so many of them, that are into that payments. And these guys do high level of volume of transactions on a daily basis. So these volumes that you might not even know that you're using their platforms, because if you go to sites like Konga or Jumia or some of these payments platforms, or even you want to pay for your jam form, so these are the payment gateways that process these transactions at the back end. So imagine a lot of people, the kind of volume of transactions that we do in Nigeria here on a daily basis, it's huge, it's massive. You don't want to understand. Or for instance, the POS vendors, they are even doing large volumes than the banks these days. An average POS kiosk in any of the streets do high volume of transactions on a daily basis. So you can imagine. So your ability to be able to manage a retained customer is something you need to track as a business. If you're not tracking your customers, then you're not good to be in the business in the first place. Then your percentage of a market share, you need to understand where you're positioned in the market. So for instance, if I'm a Konga, I need to understand what is my market share. I need to understand what is the market, what is my own share. So if in 200 million Nigerians, what is my own market share there? Am I looking at maybe 5 million active users? Am I looking at 3 million active users? Am I looking at 10,000? So what is my own? So these are the things you need to track to understand, so that you'll be able to understand if your competitors are doing better than you, or on how to grow your. So you need to track this. You need to track your net promoter score. It's just a customer loyalty and satisfaction measurement that's taken from asking customers how likely they are to recommend your product or service to others on a scale of 0 to 10. But there's lots more to the story than that, so I just don't want to go into that. So this is a medium, especially this, like I said, for customer retention. Will a customer willingly want to introduce your product, your website, your app to another person, what is going to be like their recommendation. So these are mediums that you can track to know if you're actually doing well and if your customers are actually satisfied. Because it's a customer that is satisfied that will be able to relate your product to another person. If I'm not satisfied, of course, I will condemn that product. And if one person condemns a product, imagine you're losing like maybe 50 to 100 customers. That's what it means. So understanding all these things and having a measure, or a medium to be able to track these things will help your business grow. Then your average ticket support and resolution time. Yeah, this has to do with your CRM, your backend guys. So like I will keep using the software as a case study. If you have a website that sells products online, and you have dispatch riders who are always constantly not meeting up with timeline or deadlines, if this continues, of course, you'll be having issues. Or maybe, let me use, there are platforms that there are some vendors that, actually do middlemen. They have a platform where people buy food. Let me use that as a medium because I know these are very challenging. It's a very challenging industry because, food is something that is perishable and it's better consumed same day. And you place an order for a food, from one of these vendor apps, and then at the end of the day, maybe the soup is spilled or whatever you purchase or you ordered. At the end of the day, maybe got spoiled before getting to where it's going to be delivered. If the customer is not satisfied, or maybe at the end of the day, some don't even get the product, or maybe they get the product half-baked or something, and for crying out loud, you need to have a medium to be able to track those customers. Failure to do that means that you're going to be losing that customer. And if that customer goes away, it means your app is going to die a natural death. Because if the word of mouth level continues to increase that this platform is not stable, or they are fraudsters, they will collect your money at the end of the day, they won't deliver your food, or that their bike men are so rude, or the delivery guys are so not well dressed, they are looking tattered like criminals, armed robbers, or some of them even come and rob me in my house. So if you start to have all these kind of feedbacks and you're not working towards mitigating, reducing all those things, then it means your app or your software or your product is not going to see the light of the day. You're going to die a natural death. So tracking all these things are very, very important. I don't think I can continue because there are so many things. I still have the operational KPIs that we need to track, the marketing KPIs that we need to track, your monthly website traffic, number of qualified leads, conversion rates, keywords of 10 top search engines, your blog article. If your content are not in these platforms, that means you're not doing business. So, well, maybe I'm going to continue this thing next week. A quick recap. Today we just talked about KPIs, which is very, very important from every tech startup. If you're starting up a business, you should be able to understand how to track your performance as a company, both internally and externally. So, like I rightly said, we'll continue this next week. So stay tuned, stay glued to this station. Till I meet you again same time next week. I still remain your host, Odo Emmanuel. And this is Tech Vibes. Follow us. Let's continue this conversation on all our social media platforms. On Facebook, which is Lagoon Radio Nigeria. Twitter and Instagram is Lagoonradio.Ng. And on our Facebook, on our YouTube channel, which is Lagoon.TV. Please, let's continue this conversation. I want to hear from you. I want to get your real-time feedback. At this point, I say a very big thank you for listening to me. And I'm signing out at this point. Thank you and shalom.
This is Lagoon Radio.